I made a pact with my best friend at 21 that we would fake date our families off our backs, and at my sister's wedding he confessed something that shattered me. And I want to tell you about the 8 years between when we made the pact and the moment he told me what he had been hiding. My best friend is named Soren. Soren and I had been best friends since we were 15. The pact had been a thing we had made when we were 21. The context of the pact was specific. We had both been from families that had been pressuring us about romantic partners. We had been at a bar one night when we were 21. Soren had said, "What if we just pretended to date? Our families would shut up. We could just buy ourselves some peace." I had said yes. The pact had been an agreement that we would end the fake dating when one of us got into a serious relationship. The pact had worked for 8 years. Our families had been delighted. Our families had been treating us as a couple. The treating as a couple had been so consistent that our families had been essentially planning for our wedding without our involvement. The thing was that I had been not actually dating anyone seriously during those 8 years. I had been dating but not seriously. Soren had been the same. I had been thinking that the 8 years had been the architecture of being too busy. I had been thinking that I would eventually meet someone real. I had been not meeting anyone real. But I need to back up. I need to tell you about the moments I missed. The moments that I look at now and see so clearly, but that I refused to see while they were happening. Because there were signs. There were so many signs. And I walked past every single one of them like they were furniture. The first one I think about is a night 4 years into the pact. We were at a friend's birthday party at a bar. I had been talking to a guy at the bar. I turned around to grab my drink and I caught Soren watching me from across the room. His face had something on it that I could not name at the time. It was not anger. It was something deeper and quieter. I told myself it was nothing. I know now what that look was. That look was heartbreak. The second moment was year 6. My car broke down on a weeknight. It was pouring rain. I called Soren. He drove 45 minutes in a rainstorm to get me. When I got into his car, he had my favorite snack sitting on the passenger seat. He had a blanket in the back that he handed to me because I was soaking wet. I sat in that passenger seat wrapped in that blanket eating that snack, and a thought came into my head so clearly it was almost like someone else put it there. The thought was, no one will ever take care of me like this. And then I buried it. The third moment was year 7. I had gone on 3 dates with a guy from an app. After the third date, I was sitting on Soren's couch, and Soren asked me how it went. I said, "He's nice. He's just not." And I stopped. The sentence hung there in the air. Soren waited. I said, "He's just not someone I see long term." But the sentence I actually meant, the sentence sitting right behind my teeth, was, "He's just not you." The fourth thing was year 8. Year 8 was when it started to hurt in a way I could not ignore anymore. Every family event, someone would call Soren my boyfriend. The word boyfriend would land on me, and I would feel this ache in my chest that I could not explain. I started pulling away physically at events. I held Soren's hand less. I stood a little further from him. Soren noticed. Of course he noticed. He said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, just tired." I was not tired. I was terrified. The fifth moment was the week before Jezebel's wedding. Jezebel pulled me aside in her kitchen. She had this look like she had been working up to something. She said, "I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me." I said, "Okay." She said, "Are you and Soren actually in love? Because the way he looks at you when you're not watching is not fake. I've seen it for years." I laughed. The kind of laugh that comes out too fast. I said, "It's just the pact, Jez." Jezebel did not laugh. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "I don't think it is. And I don't think you think it is either." I changed the subject, but her words stayed. I went home that night and pulled into my driveway and turned the car off and sat there for 20 minutes, just sitting in the dark with Jezebel's voice in my head. She was right. The morning of Jezebel's wedding, Soren picked me up. He was wearing a suit I had never seen before. He looked different in it, or maybe I was seeing him differently. During the ceremony, I sat next to Soren. Jezebel walked down the aisle and she looked so happy it almost hurt. Then she and her partner read their vows. They had written them themselves. Jezebel said a line that hit me so hard I stopped breathing. She said, "I spent years being afraid that loving you openly would ruin what we had. And then I realized that not loving you openly was ruining me." I did not plan what happened next. My hand found Soren's. Soren squeezed back. Neither of us looked at each other. We just sat there, hand in hand. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. Not like I had just arrived there. Like I had been standing there for 8 years and someone had just pointed down. At the reception, things felt good for a while. Soren and I danced. We laughed with family. My mom pulled me aside near the dessert table. She put her hand on my arm and said, "I'm so glad you have him. You two make sense in a way I can't explain." I smiled. I said, "Thanks, Mom." Then I noticed the shift. Soren got quiet, heavy quiet. He was standing near the edge of the patio, away from the music. I walked over. He said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to not run." The word run hit me like a wall. I knew. In that 1 second, before he said anything else, I knew. I knew what he was going to say, because some part of me had been waiting for him to say it for 8 years. The knowing was the shattering, because it meant I had known all along. Soren took a breath. He said, "The pact was not my idea because I wanted peace from my family." He paused. "The pact was my idea because I wanted to hold your hand." He said, "I almost told you in year 3. I told myself I could wait. I told myself that if I just waited long enough, you would see it on your own." He said, "Every cheek kiss at every family event was real for me. Every single one. That was the only real thing I had." And then he said the sentence that took me apart completely. He said, "I have been performing a version of loving you that was close enough to survive on, and I can't do it anymore." He was looking at me like he had just handed me everything he had and was waiting to see if I would drop it. My first instinct was to protect the structure. That is the honest truth. My brain went to math. My brain went to, if I say it back, everything changes. The pact is over. The safety net is gone. I stood there for what felt like 5 minutes. It was probably 30 seconds. The longer I stood there not saying anything, the more I could see him closing. I could see the wall going back up brick by brick. I almost said the wrong thing. I opened my mouth and the words that came out were, "Soren, I don't want to." And then I stopped. I stopped because I heard what I was about to say. I was about to say, "Soren, I don't want to ruin what we have." And the sentence was a lie. The truth was that I did want to ruin what we had. What we had was a cage I had built and decorated to look like a house. Soren heard me stop. He looked up from the ground. His face was so still. I made myself look at him. Not the version of him I had been allowing myself to see for 8 years. I looked at him like he was the answer to a question I had been pretending I was not asking. And I said it. I said, I have been in love with you too. For the same 8 years. I have been not letting myself know. Soren did not move. Then he said, say it again. His voice was barely a whisper. I said it again. He closed his eyes. He breathed out. Then he said, I need to sit down. We both sat down on the patio steps, and we both cried. It was quiet. It was exhausted. It was the kind of crying you do when you have been carrying something so heavy for so long that putting it down does not feel like relief. It feels like collapse. After a while, we went back inside. We found Jezebel. Soren looked at me. I looked at him. I said, we have something to tell you. Jezebel looked between us. Her face went from curious to knowing in about half a second. She said, it's real now, isn't it? I nodded. Jezebel grabbed both of my hands and squeezed them so hard it almost hurt. And she said, finally. But here's the thing no one tells you about the moment when the fake becomes real. The moment itself is beautiful. The weeks after are terrifying. Our first real date was 2 weeks after the wedding. Soren picked me up. I got in the car. We both sat there. For a full minute, neither of us said a word. Soren broke the silence. He said, this is weird, right? I laughed. A nervous, almost panicked laugh. I said, this is the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. He said, we've been doing this for 8 years. I said, we've been pretending to do this for 8 years. This is different. The difference was that it could fail now. Before, when we were pretending, nothing was at stake because nothing was real. Now everything counted. We started dating for real, and it was wonderful and scary in equal parts. And then, about 2 months in, Nova entered the picture. Nova was someone from our broader friend group. She was at a gathering at someone's apartment, and she pulled me into the kitchen while Soren was in the other room. She said, can I be honest with you? I said, sure. She said, don't you think it's a little convenient? 8 years of pretending and suddenly you're in love? Sounds like you just got comfortable and called it love. Her words landed in the exact place I was most afraid of. They landed in the spot I had been poking at late at night when Soren was asleep, and I was staring at the ceiling wondering if I could trust my own heart. Nova did not stop there. Over the next few weeks, the comments kept coming. At a group hangout, Nova said, loud enough for everyone to hear, must be nice to have your love story handed to you. The words found me through Kay. Kay was my closest confidant outside of Soren. She called me one evening and said, Nova's been saying things. I thought you should know. I felt the doubt spreading through me like a crack in glass. I did not tell Soren about any of it. I kept it all inside, but keeping it inside meant it had nowhere to go except into everything. I was pulling away, the same way I had pulled away in year 8 of the pact. One night, Soren looked at me across the couch and said, you're doing the thing again. The thing where you disappear while you're still in the room. I said, I'm fine. He said, you said that during year 8 and you weren't fine then either. The breaking point came at a dinner. It was at a restaurant. Our friend group all together. Nova was there, Kay was there, Aziz was there, Soren was next to me. The conversation landed on relationships, and Nova looked directly at me. She put her fork down and said, I have a question. If Soren had never said anything at the wedding, would you two still be pretending? The table went quiet. Soren looked at me. I felt the question like a hand around my throat, not because it was cruel, but because I had been asking myself the same question for months. Soren opened his mouth, started to defend me. I put my hand on his arm and stopped him. I looked at Nova, and I said, no, if Soren hadn't said anything, I would still be pretending. I would still be hiding. I would still be standing next to the person I love and telling myself it wasn't real because I was too afraid to be the one who said it first. I kept going. You're right that I didn't say it first. You're right that he was braver than me. But you're wrong that the love isn't real. I know it's real because I spent 8 years choosing him over every other person I met and telling myself it was convenience. That's not convenience. That's cowardice. And I'm done being a coward. Nova did not respond right away. Then something changed. The sharpness in her expression fell away. She said quietly, I'm sorry. I waited. She said, I've been angry at you because you have something I don't understand. Someone who waited 10 years for you. Someone who built an entire fake relationship just to be near you. I don't know what that feels like. And I wanted it to not be real. Because if it's real, then I have to figure out why no one has ever looked at me like that. Her voice broke on the last few words. I looked at Soren across the table, and I said, in front of everyone, I would have eventually said it. It might have taken me another 8 years, but I would have said it. Because the pact was never a pact. The pact was me finding the only way I could love you that didn't require me to be brave, and you were brave for both of us until I could catch up. We have been together for 3 years now. The pact is a story we tell at dinner parties, and every time we tell it, someone says, that's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. And Soren always says, it was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. I always squeeze his hand when he says that. The squeeze is the real version of every fake squeeze from the 8 years before. I still think about the lost time, not with regret exactly, but with a tenderness for the version of myself who was so afraid of love that she built an entire fake relationship to keep it at arm's length. Jezebel still brings up the wedding and says, I knew before both of you did. My mom never found out the pact was fake. Some truths are better left as gifts people already believe.